Welcome to the Ed Bargy video series. This episode we're going to be covering the basic anatomy of trail braking. The actual nuts and bolts of how, when, where, and why to trail brake will be covered in a later episode. If you Google trail braking on the web, you'll see a lot of posts on the topic. A chart similar to the one shown here will often show up. They are generally well drawn and clearly show the popular theory of trail braking. As you can see, the applied brake pressure is continually decreased from the turning point and almost all the way to the apex. This pattern is easy to understand and even sounds logical. Unfortunately, there is one common hidden misconception that I've seen repeatedly in the basic foundation of this theory. The popular theory of the changes in braking pressure during trail braking are based on a misconception of the changes in lean angle while entering the turn. Now, just to be clear, yes, it is true, the more you are leaned over from cornering speeds, the less traction you're going to have for braking. So the brake pressure must be reduced as you're leaning the bike over further and further. And the common misconception that I'm talking about is the belief that the lean angle is gradually and continually increased throughout most of the entrance of the turn and only reaching full lean angle at or just before the apex of the turn. In this diagram, notice that the relative width of the lines represents the amount of lean angle. The wider the line, the more the bike is leaned over. The blue arc shows the change in lean angle from straight up to fully leaned over. The red section shows where the bike is at stable, full lean angle. Whereas the green arc shown here shows where the bike goes from full lean back to straight. If this diagram was to a true scale, the transition to full lean would take about 120 feet, and the distance at a full lean would only be about 10 or 15 feet. If the pattern of lean angle change was the same as shown here, then the popular pattern of trail braking would be acceptable for this type of turn. This pattern does work, but it would be acceptable for street riding or maybe up in the canyons in the mountains, or maybe a track day or two, or even maybe some early entry-level races. For a true racing application, this actually is an incorrect representation of how and when a race bike leans over. This would then result in the popular pattern of braking being a little less than optimal. In a true expert-level racing scenario, the races will actually go from straight up to full lean in a very short distance. This next diagram shows a little more accurate representation of the lean angles and the transitions for a average racing scenario. The blue arc represents an approximation of the distance it would take a race bike to go from fully straight up to fully leaned over. The red arc represents the distance the bike will maintain full lean angle. The green arc would represent the approximate distance it would take a racing bike to go from fully leaned over back up to fully straight. The following is a quick, short on-bike video showing the quick transition or a quick flick from straight up to full lean. Also notice that the bike achieves full lean well before the apex of the turns. One other thing to notice is that the bike maintains full lean angle through most of the turn. This next diagram shows the pattern of changes in the lean angle and brake pressures in a true racing scenario. It does show a more complex braking pattern, but this pattern does take advantage of the longer time at a stable and full lean angle. Now, when the bike is at a stable lean, the available traction for braking is also at a stable value. The brake pressure will not need to be continually reduced for the majority of the turn. The racer can now maintain a reduced but a constant brake pressure. To start out, in this diagram, the orange section shows where the rider is maintaining full braking pressure while he's still straight up and doing a straight line braking. Now, the blue section shows where the rider will go from full braking pressure to a reduced mid-corner braking pressure. The red section here shows where the braking pressure is reduced but at a constant level. Notice the constant level through most of the entrance of the turn. And finally, the green section shows where the brakes are smoothly released to zero. This diagram represents the changes of speed for a motorcycle trail braking into the turn. The red line represents the slowing down, the deceleration from trail braking. The green arc represents the reacceleration back onto the straightaway. The relative width of the line represents the speed of the bike. The wider the line, the faster the bike is going. The smaller the line, the slower the bike is going. So you can see how the bike changes speed from the turning point all the way to the apex, and then from the apex all the way back onto the straightaway again. Trail braking is actually the final step in achieving aggressive, late, and efficient overall braking. There's other braking techniques you should master before you even attempt trail braking. Here's a list of the 5 basic concepts that I teach about braking. First, the more aggressive you are in your brakes, the shorter the distance you will need to slow down for the corner. 2, if you can slow down in a shorter distance, you can brake later and still get slowed down for the turn. 3, if you can brake later, you can stay on the gas longer. 4, if you can use the entrance of the turn to finish slowing down even more, aka trail braking, then once again you can brake later and stay on the gas even longer. And 5, if you stay on the gas longer, your lap times will improve. And after it's all said and done, the top 3 goals for achieving better lap times are throttle time, and throttle time. Extra throttle time is the main reason why we trail brake in the first place.